look out the window today or, scroll through your news feed for like 5 minutes, it is a deeply strange paradox we are living in.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost jarring.
Right, because on one hand, technology is advancing at a speed that is, well, it's almost impossible to comprehend. I mean, we are launching reusable rockets, editing genomes, and building artificial intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. The pace is just relentless.
Exactly. So if you plot our technological progress on a graph, it's this clean, aggressive line pointing straight up. But then you look at our social structures.
Yeah, that's where the picture gets a bit messy.
To say the least. You look at global wealth disparity or systemic injustice or just, the basic moral fabric of how we treat each other.
Yeah.
And suddenly that upward line just flatlines. It stutters.
It really does.
In lots of ways, it feels like we're aggressively moving backwards. I mean, we have the technology of gods, but we still seem stuck in the sociological habits of our most primitive ancestors.
I think that is the great dissonance of the modern era. We operate under this unspoken assumption that human progress is just, well, an automated mechanism.
Like it just happens on its own.
Exactly. We think of it like an escalator. You just step onto it and time naturally carries you upward to this more enlightened, more advanced future.
Right. Like as long as the clock is ticking, we're getting better.
Yeah, but history, and especially sociological history, tells a completely different story. Progress is not an escalator. It is an incredibly arduous, unpredictable climb up a jagged mountain face.
Oh, man, that's a great way to put it.
It requires constant, deliberate exertion. If you stop climbing, gravity doesn't just hold you in place, it violently pulls you down.
And that tension, right, that friction between where we are technologically and where we seem stuck morally.
Yeah.
That is exactly what we are cracking open today.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. So, for this deep dive, we are examining a fascinating radical blueprint. It's from December 31st, 1981.
A very pivotal time.
Definitely. It's a discourse given at Anandanagar by the 20th century philosopher and seer Sri Prapat Ranjan Sarkar.
And for those who might not know, he is the propounder of PROUT. That's the progressive utilization theory and neo-humanism.
Right, which we are going to get heavily into. And what we are doing today is taking a really special focus. We want to take these incredibly profound, complex philosophical concepts and break them down so clearly that honestly, even a younger student could grasp them and apply them to their daily life.
I love that approach. Make it accessible.
Exactly. We're looking at how Sarkar diagnoses the literal physics of human movement. We're going to explore exactly why human progress stalls out, and more importantly, how his framework suggests we can hotwire the engine to get humanity moving forward again.
And I think it's important to note right up front, the tone here is very optimistic.
Oh, completely.
This 1981 discourse is remarkable source material because it doesn't just, treat the symptoms of a struggling society. It presents a highly progressive blueprint for a world built on happiness, justice, and collective spiritual peace.
Yes. But to understand that blueprint, the text insists we have to start at the absolute bedrock. Before Sarkar talks about how to build a better society, he has to define the world itself.
Right, the very nature of reality.
And he does this using the Sanskrit word jagat.
Yes, and the etymology here is crucial to his entire philosophy. He explains that the word jagat, which translates to the world or the universe, is derived from the Sanskrit root verb gam.
Okay, gam.
Yeah. Combined with the suffix kavat-b. And when you put those together, it literally translates to an entity that has an inherent tendency to move.
Wow. So the very definition of the universe embedded right there in the language is motion.
Exactly. It means that dynamism isn't just an event that happens within the world.
Right.
It is the fundamental defining characteristic of the world.
That is so wild to think about. I mean, if you think about how this aligns with modern science, it is profoundly accurate.
Oh, 100%.
Like in quantum mechanics, we know that there was no such thing as true, absolute stillness. Even a rock, which was perfectly static to us, is just a buzzing hive of vibrating atoms.
It's all moving. And Sarkar is taking that inescapable law of physical motion and applying it directly to human life, both the individual level and the collective level.
So we literally cannot stand still.
Right. He posits that in the human experience, there is no true stagnation. You are either moving forward or you're in a state of decay. He actually notes that the historical movement of human beings is uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted.
Yeah, as he puts it, there are no commas, no semicolons, and no periods to check that movement.
Okay, I have to push back on that slightly, or at least, get some clarification.
Sure, go for it.
Because when I look at history, say, the European Dark Ages or certain periods of just deep, deep societal regression, it certainly looks like a period, or at least a massive semicolon.
It definitely looks that way on the surface.
Right, because entire centuries pass, whereas scientific and social progress seem to halt completely. So how does Sarkar reconcile this idea of uninterrupted movement with those historical periods of massive societal paralysis?
That is a great question, and it's precisely where his physics of human dynamism comes into play. When Sarkar says movement is uninterrupted, he means the inherent tendency and the passage of time do not stop.
Okay, time keeps ticking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, forward constructive progress, what we would call societal advancement, is not guaranteed just because time is passing.
I see.
To achieve that constructive forward movement, Sarkar lays out 3 absolute non-negotiable requirements. And if even one of these is missing, you don't get stillness.
What do you get?
You get chaotic flailing,
Right.
or you get dragged backward by entropy.
Okay, so let's look at those 3 requirements. Because he says that for historical human movement to actually occur, you need, 1, an inspiration, which he describes as a push from behind.
Right.
2, you need the capacity or the strength to actually make the move. And 3, you need a clear goal.
So let's break those down, maybe starting from the back. The goal is your vector.
Like in physics.
Exactly, like velocity is speed with a direction. Without a goal, humanity is just expending energy in random, conflicting directions. We're just running in circles.
Making a lot of noise, but going nowhere.
Precisely. Now, the second requirement, capacity or strength, refers to the latent physical, intellectual, and psychic resources of a society.
Meaning you need the actual tools to do it.
Right. You need the biological and technological means to literally take a step forward.
Now, those 2 make intuitive sense to me.
Yeah.
You need to know where you're going, and you need the legs to walk there.
Sure.
But it's that first requirement that I find most fascinating, and honestly, maybe the most challenging. The inspiration, the push from behind.
It's catalyst.
Yeah, but why is that so structurally critical? I mean, if we have this strength and we know the goal, shouldn't human beings just naturally walk toward it? Why do we need to be pushed?
Well, because of psychological and sociological entropy, human beings are not, automated machines just executing a line of code.
Right. We get tired.
Exactly. We are biological, emotional, and spiritual creatures. We face massive friction in the form of doubt, fear, resource scarcity, and despair.
Think about a massive group project at school, or like a long, grueling hike with friends.
That's a great analogy.
If you're on a 10-mile hike, everyone knows the goal is the summit, and everyone has the physical strength to walk. But around mile 7, people get blisters. They get tired.
They want to quit.
Right. If someone gets tired and stops, someone else has to physically or emotionally push them, saying, hey, move ahead. We can't stop here.
And that scales up perfectly to human history. Think about massive paradigm shifts. The shift from a geocentric model of the universe to a heliocentric one, or the major labor movements of the 20th century.
The friction there was huge.
Massive. The goal was clear truth, or basic human rights. The capacity was there, but the establishment actively punishes you for trying to move forward.
So what happens to the momentum?
The collective stalls. People become terrified or exhausted and they just stop. And this is where Sarkar's concept of the push from behind becomes the actual fuel of history. So when the collective stalls, it requires a forceful, active injection of energy from individuals who simply refuse to let the movement die. Progress requires someone to provide that emotional impetus to keep going.
So it's not enough to just lead by example from the front. You literally have to get behind the people who are exhausted and push them.
Yes, you are literally their momentum.
It makes me think of the civil rights struggles. You have this massive group fighting for equality, and inevitably, when you face dogs and fire hoses and systemic violence, fatigue sets in.
Of course it does. It's human nature to want to retreat from pain.
Right. People want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
The leaders of those movements didn't just point to the mountaintop. They actively provided the inspiration. Through speeches, organizing, sheer force of will, they provided that push, telling the collective, we cannot stop.
That is a perfect real-world application. Sarkar is highlighting a profound truth about collective human life. We are deeply, inextricably responsible for keeping each other moving.
Individual survival instinct just isn't enough.
No, it's not. If you see someone stop on that hike, you don't step over them and continue to the summit alone. You push them forward.
Okay, but this begs a pretty terrifying question. If the physics of human progress require this constant active push from behind to overcome entropy, what if the person pushing you is shoving you in the completely wrong direction?
Yeah.
Because history is also full of mass movements, right? Fueled by tremendous inspiration that led to horrific atrocities. So what is actually fueling the push?
And this is where the discourse takes a sharp, highly analytical turn. Sarkar draws from his broader philosophical works here, specifically referencing concepts established in his book, Sabatar Adibindu.
Avitara Adibindu.
Yes. He observes that all historical human movement, every push, is fundamentally inspired by one of two core ideas, two distinct motivators.
And the text identifies these two motivators as Atma-Sukha Tattva and Sama-Samaja Tattva.
Exactly.
Let's tackle that first one because it really explains the darker side of human history. Atma-Sukha Tattva basically translates to the principle of selfish pleasure.
Right. Sarkar outlines that when individuals or societies operate under Atma-Sukha Tattva, every action, every motivation, and every push is generated strictly for the sake of their own mundane pleasure.
It's a system optimized entirely for a selfish dopamine hit.
That's a great way to put it. And crucially, he argues that this pursuit of selfish pleasure rests entirely upon the foundation of dogma.
Now, dogma is a heavy word, and it gets thrown around a lot in debates. How does Sarkar actually define dogma in the context of this selfish pleasure?
In this framework, dogma isn't just, a rigid religious belief. It is any artificial boundary that places the self or the immediate in-group above the rest of humanity.
Okay, so it's about drawing lines.
Exactly, and Sarkar categorizes these dogmas into specific sentiments. There is socio-sentiment, the belief that my specific social group or caste is inherently superior.
Right.
There is geo-sentiment, an irrational attachment to a specific geography or nation that justifies exploiting other nations. And there is humano-sentiment, the idea that human beings can ruthlessly exploit the animal and plant kingdoms solely for our convenience.
So dogma is basically the intellectual justification for selfishness.
Precisely.
But here's a part of the text that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. It states that human beings yield to this dogma with the sole intention of attaining selfish pleasure, and that, quote, even educated people knowingly submit to it.
Yes, that is a very stark observation.
It literally calls them deliberate sinners who know the outcome is undesirable but do it anyway. I really struggle with this.
Why is that?
Because we like to believe that education is the ultimate cure for prejudice, right? If you teach someone history, science, and ethics, they should naturally reject dogmatic selfishness. So why does Sarkar believe education fundamentally fails here?
Because intellectual education and moral grounding are two entirely different operating systems, and one can easily hijack the other.
Okay, say more about that.
It raises a profound question about evolutionary biology and psychology. Why do highly educated corporate executives knowingly pollute rivers? Why do brilliantly educated politicians craft policies that intentionally marginalize specific communities?
Because it benefits them.
Right. It is not because they lack data, they have all the data. It is because the short-term, mundane pleasure, wealth, status, or just the psychological thrill of dominance provides an immediate, intoxicating reward to the brain.
So you're saying their cognitive dissonance is actively overridden by the reward center.
Exactly. Let's use an analogy. Imagine the human mind is a computer.
Okay.
A rigorous intellectual education installs highly advanced software. You can process complex math, understand historical precedents, and articulate ethical theories.
You've got all the good apps.
Right. The dogma operates like a corrupted, base-level operating system virus. It doesn't care about your high-level software. It secretly siphons your processing power to run a background program of tribalism and selfish pleasure.
Oh, wow.
So the educated person knows, intellectually, that exploiting a vulnerable group is wrong. They have the data. But that corrupted operating system whispers, yeah, it's wrong, but look at the power and comfort it brings you right now.
That's chilling, honestly. And the text explicitly quotes this terrifying mindset. It says, people operating under this principle think, I don't care whether it does good or harm to others, because at least I have got some pleasure out of it.
It's incredibly cynical, but it's true.
They prioritize the dopamine hit over their moral compass. And they use their high-level education not to dismantle the dogma, but to craft more sophisticated intellectual gymnastics to justify it.
Precisely. They know that humanity is above religious or national divides, yet they still engage in religious bullying or hyper-nationalism because dominating the other provides this twisted sense of belonging and superiority.
Like high school cliques or schoolyard bullies.
Perfect example.
The bullies know that excluding others is mean. But they do it anyway for the selfish pleasure of feeling dominant or fitting in with the cool kids.
They surrender their rational intellect to the intoxicating dogmatic energy of the crowd. Sarkar argues that when the intellect is subjugated by the desire for mundane pleasure, education just becomes a sharper tool for exploitation.
Which means this isn't just an individual failing, it scales up. When Sama-Samaja Tattva becomes the driving force of an entire civilization, it creates a systemic prison.
It really does.
Because you constantly need a lower class to step on to maintain your elevation. You need constant exploitation just to keep the societal dopamine flowing.
And that leads directly to how Sarkar views the so-called civilized world. He is absolutely unflinching in his critique.
He does not hold back.
No. He points out that despite our massive leaps in the field of knowledge, society is still blindly following these dogmatic sentiments. It manifests structurally as the caste system, as systemic religious persecution, and as the ruthless economic exploitation of the poor and downtrodden.
Because the people at the top of these hierarchies, the ones benefiting from all that wealth and status, they have a deeply entrenched desire to maintain that mundane pleasure.
They do not want to lose their privilege.
Right. They are addicted to what Sarkar calls their ill-wired, nasty dominance.
That phrase, ill-wired, nasty dominance, is incredibly evocative.
It really is.
It suggests a fundamental malfunction in the human psyche. They weaponize dogma to protect this dominance. They will claim a certain group is impoverished because of their inherent nature, or that a nation must be conquered for its own good. But it is all just a smokescreen to protect their selfish pleasure.
So, if education isn't enough to stop this, and intellectual debate just leads to more sophisticated justifications, what is Sarkar's solution? How do you deal with a system that is knowingly, deliberately exploiting people for pleasure?
His answer in the text is incredibly fierce. He doesn't advocate for polite reform.
No, he doesn't.
He states, the snares of dogma will have to be shattered to pieces. The iron prison gates of dogma will have to be crushed to dust.
Crushed to dust. That is a radical, uncompromising directive.
He views dogma not as a difference of opinion to be debated, but as an existential threat to human progress. It must be dismantled. He also notes that we must mercifully remove opposing theories like thorns from our path and entirely reject hypocritical ideas.
Let's talk about that imagery. Crushing iron prison gates and pulling thorns. If we go back to our earlier discussion about the jagged mountain climb of human progress.
Right, the hike.
Dogma isn't just a heavy backpack we can choose to carry. It is a literal thorn in our boots. You can't just ignore a thorn, right? You have to stop, take off the boot and pull it out, or the whole group suffers and the hike is over.
Exactly. And on a larger scale, it's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of rotting wood. You can't just paint over the wood and hope for the best.
The entire structure will eventually collapse.
Right. You have to literally demolish the bad code, the bad foundation. Taking this back to a sociological level, crushing the iron gates means engaging in relentless, uncompromising critical thinking.
It's an active process.
It is. It means refusing to participate in systems that run on exploitation, no matter how normalized they are.
Right.
When Sarkar says we must reject hypocritical ideas, he is calling out the cognitive dissonance we discussed earlier. Society claims to value equality, but designs economic systems that require a permanent underclass.
Right. Or claims to revere life, but destroys the biosphere for quarterly profits.
Exactly. Refusing these dogmas is a structural requirement for human survival. By questioning these fundamental assumptions, humanity reclaims its intellect from that virus of selfish pleasure.
So refusing dogma is the ultimate rebellion. It is an act of intellectual liberation. We smash the gates to free the people trapped inside the prison of exploitation, but we also do it to free the jailers.
Yes.
The people who have trapped their own minds in the cycle of Sama-Samaja Tattva.
That is a profound point. The oppressor is also spiritually degraded by the act of oppression. The dogma traps everyone.
Okay, so let's visualize this. We have recognized the corrupted operating system. We have done the hard, painful work of crushing the iron gates of dogma. We have pulled the thorns from our boots. The road forward is finally clear.
The friction is removed.
But where exactly does that road lead? If we aren't moving just to accumulate wealth and dominant power, where is the push from behind actually taking us?
This brings us to the core of Sarkar's spiritual philosophy and the second of those two motivators, Sama-Samaja Tattva.
The principle of social equality.
Yes. According to the text, the ultimate goal of every individual and collective movement is parama purusa.
Parama purusa, supreme consciousness.
Exactly.
So we are shifting from sociology and physics directly into the spiritual realm here.
We are, but Sarkar's genius is that he completely obliterates the boundary between the sociological and the spiritual.
How so?
Well, traditionally, when we think of spiritual enlightenment, what do we picture? We picture a lone ascetic, a monk sitting in a cave in the Himalayas, eyes closed, severing all ties to the material world.
Right, just meditating in total isolation.
He achieves inner peace while the society below him starves or burns.
The ultimate individual escape hatch.
Precisely. But Sarkar's framework argues the exact opposite. He states unequivocally that we are all moving towards Parama Purusa together. And here is the radical core of his message. You cannot move ahead spiritually if you compromise with the disparities and inequalities of collective life.
I want all of us to sit with this for a moment.
Yeah.
Because it completely rewires how most people view spirituality. Sarkar is explicitly saying that personal, individual, spiritual enlightenment is impossible, or at least fundamentally stunted, if you are leaving other people behind in suffering.
That is exactly what the text outlines. He states, we should eradicate all these inequalities while at the same time we move together towards our spiritual goal.
Wow.
The eradication of inequality is not a separate secular hobby you do on the weekends. It is the very mechanism of spiritual progress.
Think about this in terms of, think of a three-legged race.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine trying to win a three-legged race where your partner is weighed down by heavy rocks. The rocks are inequality, poverty, whatever. You literally can't win unless you stop, take the rocks off your partner, and run together.
That's brilliant. Or think of it like an interconnected electrical grid.
Oh, I like that.
If the goal is to light up the entire city's supreme consciousness, you can't just pump infinite voltage into one single house while the rest of the grid is broken.
The system will short out.
Right. Humanity is a single, interconnected circuit. The disparities, poverty, systemic racism, caste discrimination, these are damaged nodes in the network. You cannot achieve a fully illuminated grid just by focusing on your own personal node. You have to go out and repair the broken connections.
Because individual salvation is a myth if the collective life is ignored. We are a collective organism.
Yes, remember the physics of progress from the beginning. We require the collective push from behind. If you abandon the pursuit of cheap dopamine hits, the Sama-Samaja Tattva, and instead dedicate your life to repairing the grid, to fighting for social equality, the text says you attain something infinitely more profound.
Which is?
You abandon mundane pleasure, but you achieve pure spiritual peace and bliss in the realization of cosmic grace.
It is the shift from a fleeting sugar rush to deep, sustainable nourishment.
Yeah.
And a society that actually operationalizes this concept is built on the ethics of neo-humanism.
Yes.
Navyamanavadavad.
Exactly. Neo-humanism, or Navyamanavadavad, is a critical expansion of traditional humanism.
How does it expand it?
Well, traditional humanism says human beings have inherent value, but it still often operates within geosentiments, or humanosentiments. It still draws borders.
Like humans matter, but not animals. Or my humans matter more than your humans.
Exactly. Neo-humanism, Navyamanavadavad, expands that inherent value to include all living beings, the entire biosphere. It systematically removes the dogmatic borders that divide us.
So under this framework, social equality is not a dry economic theory or a political talking point. It is a hard, inescapable spiritual prerequisite.
Yes. It infuses mundane socioeconomic struggles with profound spiritual significance.
If you really internalize this, it changes the weight of every action you take. Fighting for fair wages, dismantling a discriminatory law, or protecting an ecosystem isn't just, charity or activism. You are literally clearing the spiritual path of the human race. You are repairing the grid so we can all experience that cosmic grace.
Moving together is the only way forward.
Which brings us to the ultimate question.
How do we actually do it?
Exactly. We understand the physics of movement. We see the trap of selfish pleasure and the absolute necessity of destroying dogma. We understand that our spiritual destiny requires absolute social equality. This is a breathtakingly beautiful philosophy.
It really is.
But how does a listener sitting in traffic right now or walking their dog take these massive philosophical concepts and apply them to the real world today? How do we actionize this to reach what Sarkar calls the pinnacle of human glory?
Sarkar was acutely aware that philosophy without practical application is just intellectual indulgence. To materialize Sama-Samaja Tattva, this principle of social equality, the text outlines 3 specific practical requirements.
Okay, what are they?
It states that we need physical strength, psychic intellect, and spiritual wisdom.
The trinity of human capacity.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why you need all 3.
Right. If you miss one, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, think about it. If you only have physical strength, and you mobilize people without intellect or wisdom, you just have a violent mob. If you only have psychic intellect without physical strength or spiritual wisdom, you get clever exploiters. People who use their brains to invent new dogmas and amass wealth.
The deliberate sinners we talked about earlier.
Right. And if you only have spiritual wisdom without the physical strength or intellect to actually engage with the world, you are back to being that isolated monk in the cave, completely useless to society.
The fusion of all three is absolutely required, and the text issues a stirring, almost rhetorical call to arms here.
I love this part.
Sarkar asks, when we have embraced this ideal and attained the strength, intellect, and wisdom to materialize it, should we not play a successful role to implement it? Every breath and vibration of our existence, should it not attain supreme fulfillment?
It's incredibly empowering. It shifts the tone from analytical critique to this immense actionable optimism. He is saying, you have the tools. Now, your task today is to combine your efforts and strive unitedly.
And he didn't just leave it at poetry. He built a concrete socioeconomic framework to make this happen.
Yes, and this is where Prout comes in. Prout out, the progressive utilization theory. This is the practical engine designed to materialize this progressive, optimistic, neo-humanist future.
Let's break Prout down a bit, because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, how does Prout actually function differently from the systems we have today?
Well, at a fundamental level, modern economic systems, whether they are hyper-capitalist or state communist, often fail because they are rooted ultimately in Sama-Samaja Tattva.
That's selfish pleasure.
Right. They are designed to centralize wealth and power for the mundane pleasure of a few, or they ignore the spiritual and psychological needs of the individual entirely. Prout operates on the principle of progressive utilization.
What does that look like in practice?
It argues that the physical, mental, and spiritual resources of the universe are a common heritage. They belong to everyone. They do not belong to a few elites to be hoarded.
So it's an economic system built explicitly on Sama-Samaja Tattva, social equality.
Precisely. Pre-ROU aims to guarantee the minimum requirements of life for everyone: food, clothing, housing, education, and medical care.
The baseline.
Right, so that human beings are not perpetually paralyzed by the daily struggle for mere survival. Once that baseline physical friction is removed, society can utilize its surplus wealth to encourage artistic, intellectual, and spiritual growth.
That makes total sense.
It limits the hoarding of wealth so that resources keep moving, which keeps the physics of human dynamism active. It is the structural, legal, and economic manifestation of everything we've talked about today.
It is the complete fusion of scientific, rational economics with deep collective spirituality. It is the antidote to the dogma of selfishness.
It really is.
And if you are listening to this right now and you feel that dissonance we talked about at the beginning, that weird feeling that technology is soaring while humanity is stalling, this framework offers a clear way out.
But listening to this deep dive is just the very first step.
Exactly. Knowledge only changes the world when it is applied. If we genuinely want to make this world a better place for all to live with happiness and justice, we have to actively engage with this blueprint.
Sarkar's framework requires active, united participation.
So here's how you could start providing that push from behind today.
Yeah.
We highly encourage you to explore Pre-RU deeply. Look into joining a Prout study circle. Engage with others who are analyzing how to actually implement progressive utilization in modern communities.
It's all about community effort.
And if you want to firm up your understanding of scientific spirituality and neo-humanism, Navya Manavatavad, this incredible new ethic for future humanity, you should absolutely seek out and join the YouTube channel for the Sadvipra's movement.
The concept of the Sadvipra is central to Sarkar's vision of the future.
What exactly is a Sadvipra?
A Sadvipra is an individual who has actively cultivated all three of those essential qualities: physical strength, psychic intellect, and spiritual wisdom. And they dedicate their life to serving society and fighting exploitation.
They are the ultimate pushers from behind.
Exactly. They're the ones who absolutely refuse to let the collective momentum die.
Joining movements like this surrounds you with people who are actively trying to repair the grid. And most importantly, as we always advocate when dealing with profound philosophical concepts, go to the original source.
Secondhand analysis is useful, but there is a specific vibrational resonance to the original texts.
Yes. Do refer to the original books for true authenticity and deeper awareness. Texts like The Liberation of Intellect, Neo-Humanism, and Prout in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
Read the original words of Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. Dive into the intricacies of how geosentiment manipulates the brain. or the specific economic policies of PROU. What we've discussed today is just a tiny sliver of an incredibly vast, optimistic roadmap.
And that optimism is what I find most compelling about this entire 1981 discourse.
Tell me about that.
Well, as researchers, we spend a lot of time analyzing systemic failure.
Right.
It is very easy to look at the iron gates of dogma and just feel a sense of crushing cynicism.
It can feel overwhelming.
But Sarkar's vision completely rejects despair. He reminds us that human dynamism is a law of nature. By recognizing the trap of selfish pleasure, by ruthlessly applying critical intellect to dismantle dogmas, and by uniting our physical, psychic, and spiritual capacities, the text assures us that we will absolutely attain the pinnacle of human glory.
The pinnacle of human glory.
It is not a utopian fantasy. It is our inevitable destination, provided we are willing to do the work.
It completely shifts the perspective. We aren't just surviving. We are building towards something magnificent.
We are.
So let's take a breath and synthesize the massive terrain we've covered in this deep dive.
Sounds good. We began by redefining the world itself, Jagat, as a state of perpetual motion. We realize that historical progress is uninterrupted, but it requires constant inspiration, strength, and a goal to move forward constructively.
We then exposed the hidden engine of societal stagnation, the pursuit of selfish pleasure, or Sama-Samaja Tattva. We analyzed how this dopamine-driven selfishness weaponizes dogma, overriding even advanced education, and trapping humanity in a corrupted operating system of exploitation.
Which brought us to the absolute structural necessity of smashing those iron gates of dogma. We saw that relentless critical thinking and the rejection of hypocritical ideas aren't just moral ideals, they are physical requirements for clearing the path of human progress.
And that cleared path leads us to the ultimate realization that our collective spiritual destination, supreme consciousness, can never be reached if we leave others behind.
Right.
Through the lens of neo-humanism, Navya Manavadavad, we see that eradicating social inequality is the fundamental prerequisite for collective spiritual bliss.
Finally, we explored how to make this vision a reality today by combining physical strength, intellectual rigor, and spiritual wisdom, and applying them through the socio-economic framework of PRUT.
It is a complete paradigm shift. It takes progress off the automated escalator and puts the responsibility and the power directly into our hands, which brings us right back to you.
The microcosm reflects the macrocosm.
Exactly. We've talked about the macro scale of human history, but the physics of this movement apply to every single micro interaction in your daily life. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
If the very definition of our universe is motion, and our ultimate goal is a shared collective spiritual bliss, take a hard look at your own daily momentum. Ask yourself, in my career, in my relationships, in my social choices, am I moving forward just to secure my own comfort and a momentary feeling of dominance? Or am I actively repairing the grid? Am I providing that vital, relentless push from behind to ensure that we all cross the finish line together?
That is the defining question for the future of humanity.
Thank you so much for taking this incredible journey with us today. Keep diving into those original texts, keep questioning the dogmas around you, and we will see you next time as we continue our deep dive into humanity's progressive, optimistic future.